unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Timothy Bradley goes off, says that Errol Spence Jr. is most definitely ducking Terence Bud Crawford. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Now, Tim Bradley had an interview. It was captured by Fight Hype. Link in the description. And he goes off. Former 2-division world champion. He basically said Errol Spence is the reason the Terence Crawford fight ain't happening because he's ducking, right? I'll read a direct quote. Tim Bradley says, and I quote, "Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, the two best guys I don't think we'll ever get to see fight. I really don't. It's terrible. You guys should fight." You know what I'm saying? The economics of boxing is just the way it is, I guess. It freaking sucks. I want to see these guys get it on. Stop saying you're number one. Stop saying you're this. You fight Terence Crawford. You fight Errol Spence. I know Terence wants to fight, but Errol ain't saying nothing. Come on. Terence has been out and boisterous saying that I want this fight, but they're not answering their phones. They don't want to do business. I don't know what else to say. He goes on to say that Errol Spence, yeah, he's ducking him. Absolutely, he's ducking him. Yeah, y'all take that. He's ducking Terence Crawford. He doesn't want to fight Terence Crawford. I'm telling you that right now. If he wanted to be considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in the game, or number 1 or 2, he'd fight Terence Crawford, right? He was also asked about basically the fact that, you know, actual reality that Sean Porter is the next person on the list for Errol Spence. And he says, basically, he gave like a pretty bad explanation. He basically says Sean Porter is a good fighter and a dog. Like, you know, he's solid. I can't take nothing away from him, but he's not favored to win. But he's a dog, you know. And Errol's about to fight Sean Porter September 28th at the Staples Center. Listen, I got to keep it a buck. Let's talk about it. Tim Bradley, he's way off the mark with this. And I've went over this several times. And the funny thing with this new media shit, I say the shit before it happens, and then when it happens, people, I don't know if they forget. I mean, hopefully you guys remember what I previously said. I told you what was going on. I don't think Terence Crawford or Errol Spence are definitely afraid of fighting each other or scared to fight each other. I don't believe that at all. However, from the business side, it makes sense for Errol Spence to do what the fuck he's doing and eliminate the guys on his side if he can beat him, if he's good enough to beat him. And in addition to eliminating the guys on his side, he's building his profile. He's building his brand. Listen, people, like, it sounds like Timothy Bradley got the Top Rank, you know, memo. And he's just saying what the same type of thing like Bob Arum. Oh, Al Heyman, he doesn't want to make the fight. Why should, you know? And if anybody really analyzes this, then you'll understand that it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't make sense that he's ducking him, because I love Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Both terrific fights. I think it's a great, excellent fight for the division, right? However, if you think about it, why would they do anything else? Like, first of all, they're talking about Terence Crawford. They haven't even announced his opponent. So he's probably going to fight Mean Machine. I think that might be his mandatory. He's probably going to fight him in Omaha, right? Because that's the type of fighter that Top Rank would probably be able to facilitate for him. You know, take care of your mandatory. Mean Machine, Kavalophagus or whatever, Snuffleupagus, he's not no big name. He's not a big person. So what is a bigger risk? What is a bigger risk? Errol Spence fighting Sean Porter, or Top Rank facilitating a fight with Mean Machine. You know, Errol Spence just fought against Mikey Garcia, who was, you know, on people's pound for pound top 10 list and things of that sort. So it doesn't even make sense when Errol Spence is having a tough schedule. The other thing is people want to rush this particular fight, but they didn't say shit to other fights. So I know it's propaganda. I know it's an agenda. For example, why haven't we heard Bob Arum or Timothy Bradley, who have now both been on record blaming PBC, blaming Al Heyman, and or blaming Errol Spence, you know, depending on which interview we're talking about. They've all laid the blame on, you know, basically the PBC side and Errol Spence, and said he's ducking or Al Heyman's ducking and don't want to make the match. But why would it only work in certain divisions with certain fighters? When have you ever heard Bob Arum or Timothy Bradley say that Manny Pacquiao ducked Terence Crawford? Manny Pacquiao was fighting Chris Algieri, Brandon Rios, Jesse Vargas, and Bradley 3, and a slew of other fights that really didn't build his brand. Like, we had already watched the Bradley first 2 fights, and I thought Pacquiao won those, right? What does the Algieri fight really do? He was coming off a very tough, arguable win where he could have lost to Ruslan Provodnikov. Brandon Rios actually was coming off of a loss. Jesse Vargas had already lost to Tim Bradley, etc. So how come Tim Bradley didn't say nothing about Pacquiao avoiding Terence Crawford? You know, and I've noticed this with black fighters sometimes. Seems to be like when it comes to their own race, sometimes the black fighters that are in the spotlight, it's almost as if they feel pressured to go all in and go off on fellow black fighters. Now listen, fair is fair, right is right. You know, I'm not gonna ever condone somebody doing something that's wrong just because someone's black or just because someone's this. So I'm not asking for that. I'm not asking for anyone to, you know, if there's a black serial killer, I'm not saying that a black person has to support that. You get what I'm saying? But what I am saying is keep that same energy, keep that same criticism. And we don't see that. There's a lot of cooning going on. And you see, again, a lot of black personalities, black pro athletes, they seem to be all impartial to non-black fighters. And then when it comes to the black fighters, they're contemporary, you know, like people that maybe look or sound or come from the same environments as them. They seem to go all in on them. You know, when have we ever seen Tim Bradley go all the fuck in on Lomachenko? You know, Lomachenko never fought Orlando Salido. Why didn't he say Lomachenko's ducking Salido rematch? You know, Salido beat Lomachenko, and to this day, like Wilder voice, they have never fought again. We never see Tim Bradley attack that. And then on top of that, it makes you look bad because Terence Crawford just came out and he's the fighter in question. And he specifically said, no, I don't think that Errol Spence is ducking me. You know, so for Tim Bradley to come out and say, no, yeah, you're not even the fighter. You're a retired fighter. Tim Bradley's accusing Errol Spence of ducking when Terence Crawford himself, the guy in question, he says he don't think that Errol Spence is like ducking or afraid of him. You know, it's just more of a competitive thing, like, oh, I'll beat this guy, and Errol Spence is saying the same thing. So this looks to me bad on Bradley's behalf because it looks like he's hating, you know, and I don't know what it is. Like I said, I've noticed this with certain black fighters that have the capacity to get their thoughts out on a routine basis. They seem to go all in on fellow black fighters for no reason. And there's a lot worse shit going on in boxing, and it's being overlooked and or not being said. Like Triple G's fighting Steve Rolls. That's worse. So what's worse, Triple G fighting Steve Rolls or Errol Spence fighting Mikey Garcia undefeated and Sean Porter, a guy who's a champion with all respectable losses? The Kell Brook loss was respectable, and then so was the Keith Thurman, meaning he wasn't just out there getting slumped and his ass beat. And then he beat you guys who just dominated Omar Figueroa. But again, you see Thin Eye Bradley going all in on Errol Spence particularly, but he don't have that same energy for Lomachenko when he talks about Triple G, when he talks about Manny Pacquiao, you know, and we see this pattern. People do it with Deontay Wilder, you know, and it's funny because sometimes you hear fighters say like, oh, this, you know, I'm the fighter. These guys never stepped in the ring. Like, let's say me, oh, Ego's not a fighter. Yeah, but sometimes that's at least for a person like me, sometimes that's a benefit because I don't have these built-in biases or agendas. I have full creative control. I could say what Top Rank's doing right, what Top Rank's doing wrong. You know, I could say what PBC's doing right, wrong. I can say it with DAZN. I have full, complete control. But then you get some of these guys and they work for HBO Boxing and they work for ESPN and stuff and DAZN, and you see like a built-in narrative that it's almost like they're forced to push. Like, oh yeah, Deontay Wilder's not that good. You know, Errol Spence is the duck artist. Come on, man. People are accusing ducking when there was really no negotiation. You know, Tim Bradley's just following suit on some bullshit that Bob Arum put out there that Al Heyman and Spence don't want to make the fight. Again, where's this pressure for other fight? Anthony Joshua, he didn't fight Wilder. So where's this, oh, Anthony Joshua ducked the fuck out of Wilder. You get what I'm saying? And then we have clear-cut examples of fights that should be easy to make that are in-house fights, and they still not happening. Like Canelo, Demetrius Andrade. We don't hear Tim Bradley talking about that. They're both aligned with the same team, same app. Their promoters have worked together for Canelo's last two fights. You don't see Canelo going in saying, you don't see Bradley saying Canelo's he's going the opposite way of Demetrius Andrade ducking him, and they're on the same side. But then on this interview, Tim Bradley's trying to make it sound like, oh, who cares about these sides, and that he knows how that works because he didn't fight when Bradley was an active Top Rank fighter. He didn't fight none of these guys either. When have we seen Bradley and Adrian Broner went back and forth on social media? We never seen a fight. Bradley versus Danny Garcia, never seen it. Bradley versus Keith Thurman. Bradley was asked about fighting Errol Spence at a point in time. It wasn't even that long ago. And he said, man, Errol Spence, why should I fight him? How much money we talking? How much money I'm going to give for that? That's nobody wants to see that. Or he dismissed it, whatever he said. The interviews you can find on the YouTube, on the net. So if anything, Bradley avoided Errol Spence. And I think he got ordered to fight him. I think Bradley got ordered to fight Kell Brook. So Bradley has a really good resume. I will give him that. You know, I don't take away credit. I think Bradley does have a good resume. But there's still guys he didn't fight, especially the PBC. And people wanted to see all those fights. You know, Danny Garcia, that would have been a great fight. You know, but he never fought him. So how is Bradley going to act like he don't understand this whole politics of being on the different sides and having different priorities from the promoter? I mean, come on. This is simple arithmetic. Beyond that, I talked about this before, and now people are playing catch up. Errol Spence is in a position to become a superstar if he keeps doing what he's been doing, which is win, kick ass, take names, dominate, keep being himself. He's winning, period. If he keeps unifying and beating undefeated fighters and collecting more belts, he's winning. There's no way Terence Crawford can be the A side at this pace if Errol Spence keeps winning. There's no way, because you have Spence, who just fought against Mikey Garcia, fight I went to and covered. He was undefeated and he dominated him every single round and nearly stopped him in the 9th round. Then if he looks good versus Sean Porter, he picks up the WBC belt. Let's say he has to fight his mandatory, which is Ugas. Ugas arguably beat Sean Porter, and he definitely beat Omar Figueroa on the Pacquiao-Thurman card. So he has that option. So Ugas is a terrific Cuban fighter he knocked out Ray Robinson, a guy who beat Terence Crawford in the amateurs too. So if Errol Spence goes the direction and is forced to fight his mandatory, then that's a respected fight. Ugas was on Pacquiao-Thurman undercard, and he whooped Omar Figueroa every round basically. And before that, he gave Sean Porter. So he has, in my view, a bigger brand, and he's more of a respectable opponent than Mean Machine. People haven't seen Mean Machine that watch the welterweight division all the time. Or Pacquiao won. If Pacquiao's down to fight Errol Spence, then that's a big fight for him. So Danny Garcia, Errol Spence just has more options. So this is not, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand they're building, and it's not because they have to, because they're avoiding Terence Crawford. Why wouldn't you? Period. Why wouldn't you build Terence? Why wouldn't you build Errol Spence to the point where you know how Bob Arum has worked with Al Heyman before, right? If they do the Tyson Fury fight, they're gonna have to work together again, Mayweather, Pacquiao, etc. You know how they operate. You want to dead that and eliminate, because they tried to get Pacquiao and make him look like he was equal to Floyd Mayweather in terms of the negotiating table. So now what they're doing is they're familiar with that. They're stripping that away from Top Rank. Like, oh, okay, we'll fight Terence Crawford, but we're gonna fight him after Errol Spence is a household name. So there's not gonna be any doubt who is the bigger star and who is the A side. That's all this is. And I've called it from day one, and I haven't wavered or changed anything that I thought. I think that's the true reason. Bradley's claiming that he's ducking. There's no contract sent. There's Bob Arum complaining about Al Heyman. And then he did it on the Crawford Khan, card, said Al Heyman's ruined it and boycott his events. And then weeks later, he's talking about working with Al Heyman for the Tyson Fury Wilder rematch. So come on. This agenda smear campaign, it looks horrible. I don't know if it's also a way to get back, because PBC hasn't been showing the WBO belt, and they didn't really recognize Terence Crawford in like on-screen graphics. But either way, this shit looks petty, and the real fans know what it is. Don't think Terence Crawford is ducking Errol. Terence Crawford also believes that Errol Spence is not ducking him, and I agree with Terence Crawford, not Tim Bradley. Where he's ducking based on what? And then Bradley sounds foolish to say he's fighting a dog and a great, good, solid opponent in Sean Porter, but because he's favored to win, somehow that's a negative. You see how they do black fighters? Somehow to unify is somehow a negative. So Sean Porter has been more active than Keith Thurman. Pacquiao gets all this fucking credit for being 40 years old and beating Keith Thurman, and I think he deserves credit, but you don't see the same thing. Keith Thurman was coming off a bad night with Jose Cito Lopez, where he nearly got stopped, and then before that, nobody seen Keith Thurman. He was in the Ozarks playing the flute or some shit, right? But when Pacquiao consolidates the WBA belt, beats Keith Thurman, everyone praises it. Oh yeah, this is great. So that's similar to a unification, and Pacquiao got all the props in the world for being 40, and AJ ain't nothing but a number. But then when Errol Spence is fighting Sean Porter, you have people like Bradley, who somehow, some way didn't fight any of these PBC guys, and somehow, some way is claiming that Sean Porter is a dog and he's no pushover, but yet and still, since Errol Spence is favored to win it, somehow that's not a meaningful fight, or he's ducking. Again, I've already went over this, and it is really redundant if you follow my channel. The bottom line is this: I love Terence Crawford, know some of his family members. He's a great guy. I've interviewed him. I've covered his fights. I will continue to support on my channel, because that's what I do. But Terence Crawford is a new addition, not Bobby Brown, but he's a new addition to the welterweight division. That's it. The bottom line is, whether you rate his skill higher than Sean Porter, that's fine. That's skill for skill. That's the eye test. The bottom line is, Sean Porter is battle tested. Sean Porter has a better welterweight resume. There's no way to argue that. Sean Porter has been fighting at welterweight a lot longer. So he's fought Danny Garcia, you guys who just dominated Omar Figueroa. He fought Keith Thurman. He fought Kell Brook when he was undefeated champion. He fought Devin Alexander. He fought Paulie Malignaggi, right? He's fought Adrian Granados. He fought all these guys. Eric Bonet even. Julio Diaz. He sparred with Pacquiao. He has an amateur background. He beat Usyk in the amateur. So he has amateur pedigree. He has professional resume where he's fought everybody he needed to fight. Terence Crawford, I'm not knocking him. He hasn't fought but 3 people, 2.5, because he just moved up, because he was in a lighter division. That's just a fact. Terence Crawford fought Jeff Horn, his first fight, destroyed him. and he then fought Jose Benavidez, and then he just knocked out Amir Khan and made him quit. That's it. So he has like 2.5 legit fights, and I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying that this is what Top Rank is providing for him. I do think Terence Crawford will fight anybody, but at the end of the day, Sean Porter has a better welterweight resume. There's no way you can even contest that just based on the amount of fights and the names that Sean Porter has stepped in with. So we don't know how all those fights would play. Undefeated Kell Brook versus Terence Crawford, because he wasn't up there at that point. He was in lighter divisions. So we have to go off what's on paper. So Sean Porter versus Errol Spence, meaningful fight. It's makes all the sense in the world. It's an easier fight to suggest and pull off, and it gives Errol Spence, or the winner, Sean Porter, it gives them a lot of major props in the world of boxing, whoever wins that fight. So whatever Bradley's talking about, he sounds like a company man, and it's pure lunacy to make it look like Errol Spence is ducking. So Errol Spence is fighting a unification, and he's ducking Crawford, whose Top Rank is likely going to put in there with a mandatory who ain't beat nobody in Mean Machine. Mean Machine ain't had no crazy performances. Recent performances, he's actually looked bad in some of them. So, Bradley he looks salty, he looks hating. And he's done this, I don't know what it is with Errol Spence, but this has been going on. He says, "Oh, I see what Mikey sees. He got to watch out." Everything he says about Errol Spence is negative. He said, Mikey was like, "I see something. I see it." And then Bradley did an interview talking about, "I see what Mikey sees." And then he was, "Why should I fight Errol Spence? And Errol Spence don't move his damn head." Like, to everything that Bradley says about Errol Spence is negative. It's his time now. Just give him his props. You look like a hater when Terence Crawford, the guy you're, I guess, going to bat for, he's not even saying what Bradley's saying. Errol Spence ain't saying Crawford's ducking him, and Crawford said that he don't think Errol Spence is ducking him. You just had Bradley repeating this noise like a true Top Rank employee. It just doesn't make sense. Spence is ducking. He's ducking a 1-belt Terence Crawford, who has 3 fights in the division against, not the top names. But he's fighting Sean Porter, who has fought top name. Keith Thurman fought Sean Porter. He held his own with Pacquiao, and he fought Danny Garcia. So Keith Thurman's been in the mix with all of them. Sean Porter fought those same guys, except for the Pacquiao was like more so sparring. And he also fought Kell Brook and, like I said, Adrian Granados and Broner, and defeated Broner. He won like 11 rounds out of 12 or some shit. You get what I'm saying? So how you ducking? It sounds stupid if you really break it down. So you have a choice to fight 1-belt champion A or 1-belt champion B, and 1-belt champion B, whether you like his style or not, has done more for that division. He even fought at 165 as an amateur. So you're going to accuse Errol Spence of ducking Terence Crawford to fight a more developed and experienced welterweight who's been battle tested at that weight and has even fought at higher weights in the amateurs, like 165 again, and beat Alexander Usyk, has wins over Edwin Rodriguez and Demetrius Andrade in the amateurs. These are guys that went on to fight, in Usyk's about to go to heavyweight. Edwin Rodriguez is 68 and 75, and Andrade's at 60 now. Sean Porter has amateur wins over that. And then even as a pro, he continued fighting tough names. So it doesn't even make sense that you would duck somebody. Sean Porter is not a cute style that you would want to fight. Sean Porter also fought Andre Berto. I forgot about to add him. He fought everybody. And again, Terence Crawford, he mixes up. He's very crafty. He's very agile. But Sean Porter has more of a pesky style because he's awkward. He showed he could take a punch in the Thurman fights and Danny Garcia fights and keep coming. And he could box a bit, you know what I'm saying? So his style is actually, you might fuck around, get a headbutt, a clash of heads, bleed, So that could be a potentially rough fight for Errol Spence, I don't know how the Terence Crawford would. So you got to really start breaking these fights down like I did in this video. We unpack. Let me know what you guys think. We worked. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button. And you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.